back to the 3rd of February in 2010, back to Craven Cottage.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Taylor's first game in the Premier League. What can you remember about that?
Well, I can remember, first of all, it was actually my second game, because the first game I called off 3.5 hours before kickoff. So my first game was Portsmouth Birmingham, and I had to do a pitch inspection at Fratton Park, and I called it off 3.5 hours before kickoff. So the Fulham Portsmouth game was also a rearranged game, which was originally, I think because it was myself and Michael Oliver were given the opportunity to referee some development games. And if I remember rightly, Fulham Portsmouth was Michael's first game.
Yeah.
And I think that was off the first time because of weather. And then Ollie got injured before the rearranged games. So then I ended up doing that match. So, yeah, so it wasn't, originally I was meant to be at Portsmouth, but Fulham Portsmouth, yeah. So in fairness, for a first game in such a spotlight, it couldn't have been any more straightforward. I think there was one caution.
87 minutes, Ben.
Oh, nice to see you've done your homework, mate. The two managers were probably two of the most placid and fairest managers that you will ever come across in football. Roy Hodgson and Avram Grant.
Yeah.
And then I obviously had a fantastic fourth official in Alan Wiley, who obviously then went on to become my coach for a couple of years when he retired. So obviously really, really proud moment. With it being a night game, it obviously limited the opportunity for the family to come down. But thankfully, my two best mates actually worked in London, so they were actually at the game, which was really nice, actually.
So you're 10 years into your Premier League career now, and 248 games later.
Mm-hmm.
What were your first aims when you first got onto the panel?
Survive. Survive. Yeah, and which is the aim of everybody, isn't it? Once you get promoted to a particular level, is to survive and be kept on. So get your feet under the table, get accepted by players and managers, get some experience, and then obviously then try and keep working towards more goals further down, which obviously changed depending on where your career kind of goes. So you've obviously got your domestic goals of 4 major cup finals, and then for those people who are in the right age bracket, try and aim to obviously get onto the international list, and that obviously takes you to other opportunities for tournaments, particular matches, finals, different roles, so.
So moving into the Premier League life, how would a normal week be preparing for a Premier League game, and does that change when you move into Europe?
Well, it certainly changes when we move into Europe, yeah, and it's very difficult again to say to you this is a typical week, because everything's different. It depends what fortnightly training camp we have on. Depends on how many matches you have. So maybe in one week you might have 3 or 4 domestic matches. Depends if you're going to be refereeing your bar. If you're fourth official, just really depends on your other commitments as well. Any extra work, any talks you're doing, anything like that. And then obviously everything changes significantly when you're scheduled to go abroad as well. So the dynamics is usually a 3 days for a game abroad, sometimes 4 or 5 days if you're going into the far reaches of Eastern Europe or Russia. And obviously when you as a ref, you've got overall responsibility for the whole team's arrangements. So trying to coordinate, making sure everybody's comfortable with the routes they're flying, times they're flying at. We obviously have to be arriving at certain times in the city where the match is to have meetings and test VAR equipment. But it's also important for me to make sure the rest of my team's happy. So, okay, I'm in charge of the team, but I certainly don't believe that I just get to decide everybody's travel arrangements because I don't really know the fine intricacies of everybody else's personal lives. If they might need to be at home for something particularly with the kids or the partners or something like that. So it's very much a coordinated effort to make sure everybody's happy with arrangements for going abroad. But then we also like to try and tie in domestic stuff with international stuff. So if I'm flying back into the country on a Thursday night or a Friday, and I'm scheduled to be officiating Saturday in London, it doesn't make sense to go home to then travel back down, kind of thing. So logistics take a little bit of time sorting, but yeah, these are all the things away from the gaze of people that go on behind the scenes.
So, what would you say you enjoy most about match day?
Well, probably the same for everything. Is just the buzz and the adrenaline rush of matches. So particularly, we're fortunate in England where we have some of the biggest stadium in the world, and so every weekend, every match has an amazing atmosphere. So if there's one thing you could probably share with everybody to give them the taste is actually what does it feel like for those last 5 or 10 seconds you stood in the tunnel before you walk out in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people, particularly in the higher profile games.
So you've been a FIFA ref since 2013. How did you feel when you got that phone call to invite you onto the international list?
Well, clearly you're delighted, and also excited at different challenges that you're going to face. The scrutiny as well at being an English FIFA referee is tenfold because everybody do not underestimate how many people watch games in England.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, they will give you a breakdown of every last game that you've done. So, that's one challenge, but it's equally an opportunity to engage with people and to discuss situations. And one thing we certainly have in England is our competitions here have slightly different interpretations to how situations like handball or offside are interpreted, and so it becomes a real skill for you and your team to be able to adapt how you apply certain laws depending on which competition you're officiating in, because expectations are totally different in different parts of Europe and the world compared to England.
So I've got here that your first Champions League game was the second qualifying round in 2013, Slovan Bratislava versus Ludogorets. Is that correct?
So first qualifying game was, yeah. So first group stage match was in 2015.
Yeah.
And that was Astana against Atletico Madrid. And that particular game in Astana sometimes the biggest challenge can be rest and recovery coming back from games and stuff like that. But I've never been so tired in my life on that trip. I think the time difference is something like 6 hours to the UK.
Yeah.
And we arrived a day and a half before the game, and I think I spent all but 3 of those, all but 3 hours of that time in bed asleep. Then the game was played indoors because it was -18 outside. Game finished at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we flew out again about 4 o'clock the following 3 hours after the game had finished, kind of thing. But yeah, so the general progression is obviously within UEFA. There's categories from elite down to category 3. Same for the female referees. So until you become a Cat 1 referee, Cat 1 referees start refereeing group stage games, usually in the Europa League. Yeah. They will get the odd Champions League group stage game as well. But you only really start to do regular Champions League group stage matches when you become elite in the elite group. And so both myself and Michael have been very fortunate from 2015 to 2017 when we got promoted into the elite group. We were, based because of our performances, we were both lucky enough to get several development games in the Champions League before we were promoted to the elite group.
So you're in charge of the biggest games domestically, some of the biggest games abroad, particularly this season in the Champions League. You know, you've PSG, Dortmund, Real Madrid, PSG. Do you ever get the opportunity to just take a moment, whether it be during the game, before the game, just to realise about the stage that you are refereeing on?
Not during the game, no, because I think that's a really slippery slope to start going down if you start trying to take in where you are and the players you're dealing with, because you certainly would start to lose focus then. And even on the time you're in the city where the match is being played, it's nowadays we really need to keep some specific focus on preparing and delivering the games, because the scrutiny is really, really intense. Not just from the clubs involved, but also from UEFA. You know, because we have a referee observer in the stadium, but we also have a referee observer watching on the television to make sure he's not, the guy in the stadium's not missing anything that's happening. So the more we can focus and concentrate on the job in hand, obviously the time for reflection is, and to acknowledge what we're involved in is either when you're looking back at the game when you get home, when you're going through your analysis, but then also, you know, if you look back over a certain number of years, you can look back at the games you've been involved in your various roles. I was lucky enough, before I got promoted to the elite group, I was involved quite heavily in the additional referees behind the goal, and you know, I was fortunate enough to be involved in all 4 UEFA major finals in that role, with between Mark Clattenburg and Martin Atkinson, which I believe is another important component, which has helped me to kind of progress internationally, because you get that extra experience helping your mates and supporting the team when they're actually on the field, but you also get yourself known with people as well, so you're not a stranger rocking up for your first Champions League group stage game. You've already been involved in another form. So I really believe that the more experience you can get at a particular level in whatever form is really beneficial.
You talk about the media scrutiny and the amount of pressure surrounding the games and what's at stake. Do you feel the pressure, and how do you deal with it?
I don't feel the pressure. I get frustrated a lot of the time, because people involved in, and this applies to people within refereeing as well as the media. People can never be bothered to actually get the facts straight before they start writing or saying or passing opinions, and so people incorrectly quote law lots of times in the media, as do some people involved in refereeing through the levels. People are more than happy to criticise and pass judgment, but they're not prepared to share discussions when they're involved in certain situations. And VAR is a really good example in the last 12 months in this country, both within refereeing and in the media. People choose not to learn about the processes and the protocols that apply to situations. So a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the media in the last 6 months, with suggestions how to improve VAR, totally doesn't fit into protocols that you have to work to with IFAB. All of a sudden, laws of the game need changing, not VAR. I think there was one really amusing example I heard was we get rid of the VAR in Stockley Park and the ref just goes to look at it at the screen. So the person in the media who suggested that clearly doesn't understand how the referee gets to look at something on the screen, because it's the person in Stockley Park that sends them that image to look at the screen. So he created this image in my head of me having to go to the pitch and spend 25 minutes rewinding a videotape to try and find a penalty I've missed or something like that. So I think it's really important that people take the time to educate themselves before they really start jumping on bandwagon criticising, and I genuinely level that at people within refereeing as well as the media, because people don't always take that time.
So we've talked about your Premier League experience, we've talked about your international experience. Saturday the 27th of May 2017, Wembley Stadium, Arsenal-Chelsea, Anthony Taylor's walking out, holding the match ball. Can you just tell us what you remember of the day of the FA Cup final and how it made you feel to be appointed to the biggest game in English football?
Well, you're really conscious when you get appointed to the cup final. So after the initial phone call when you find out that you've been appointed, and with the added bonus that it's a huge derby match to add a bit of extra spice to it. Then when you sit back and reflect, you actually think, well, I only get to do this game once in my whole career. I don't want to mess it up. And so, again, the way I approached it was not only how do I personally best prepare, but how do I prepare the whole team for doing the very best performance they can on that particular day. And part of that was getting people familiar with the setting they were going to be operating in. Now, I was really fortunate that all my cup final teams, so Bezic, Perry, Madley and Nunn, they'd all officiated at Wembley in some shape or form. So nobody was going to be doing their first ever match at the stadium, which one's, in my view, was a positive, because they're not going to be overawed by the thing. One thing I was really conscious I wanted them to do, I wanted them to make sure that when we visited the stadium the day before the game, I wanted them to take the walk that they would take after the game when they were collecting the medal. Because I wanted them to imagine walking up those steps in an empty stadium and imagining what it would be like walking through all the spectators up onto the royal box to Prince William to get your medal, and imagine having performed to the very highest level, and just be really proud. And then imagine doing that again 24 hours later when the actual game had finished. Now, thankfully, the game went very well. There were some really important decisions to take. Under the laws of the game at that time, 3 years ago, there was still grey areas for sure, particularly in offside interpretation. But I mean, obviously, the main talking point in the game was the dismissal of the Chelsea player for simulation. Now, I've been asked many times, what was like your process at that time? Now, at that moment in time, you are just focused on deciding whether that should be a penalty or not. So you've concentrated on adjusting your position. You've concentrated on judging that there's clearly, well, at the time there was clearly no contact. And then you've got the moral dilemma in your head. Do you just play on and do absolutely nothing because he's on a yellow card? Or do you stop the game, give a second caution and send somebody off, which is very unusual in the FA Cup final? Now, thankfully, I chose to stop the game and send the player off. And until you see it after the game, you're thinking, I hope that's right. I really hope that's right. Now, thankfully, we got some very positive media coverage after the game for making that decision. But the most important thing is the decision was correct.
Anthony Taylor has got that right, and it's silly play from Victor Moses.
You talk about those two big decisions, and I've got the Alexis Sanchez goal after 4 minutes wrote down here. That decision was right, and it was great teamwork between yourself and Gary Bezic. Throughout the game, is that playing in the back of your mind? That you hope that you've got between the two of you, that you've both got the decision right? And how did you sort of, okay, that's gone now, next decision?
No, I mean, again, this is part of about developing that kind of mental resilience. So once you've made a decision, you can't have it in the back of your mind. The only time you can revisit it is once the game's finished. And of course, teams will try and argue that you got the decision wrong. But again, part of this process is about developing those relationships and building that rapport with players and managers, so you have the ability to describe why you've given a decision. So I still remember at half time, so we don't get to see any images at half time. I remember coming out into the area, the tunnel area at Wembley, and Conte and Gary Cahill just come out the Chelsea changing room. Gary Cahill had said to me, he said, it's handball. I said, well, it's hit his hand, but did you see where it came off first? And he's like, well, yeah. I said, it hit his knee, hasn't it? I said, you've watched it, so you'll see. It's hit his knee, so it just can't be deliberate. So you wouldn't expect me to give a penalty against you for it. All right, okay. And that killed all debate. Of course, the handball laws changed now, so there would 100% be a different outcome. You'd penalise the handball before any discussion about offside. But it's always about having that clarity in your mind to be able to describe what you're seeing. So people still may disagree with your final decision, but if you're able to describe to them what they've just watched on television, they straight away will start to have a lot more understanding for why you've given a decision.
So we're coming to the end now. I just want to you mentioned at the start of your role with FA Corps. I'm someone who's had the privilege of being part of the group for the last 3 seasons, and you talk about people having positive influences on your own career. You're someone who's definitely had a positive impact on my own through working with the FA Corps programme. I remember 3 seasons ago, being nominated by the County FA, meeting you at the first time, and straight away I wanted to up my game to impress you. Can you just talk about the role that you have within FA Corps, and for those who may not be aware of the programme watching, what it's all about and what it involves?
Yeah, so FA Corps basically is the FA's talent identification programme. So the whole aim of the programme is to try and identify those with potential to progress through the semi-professional game onto the professional game, and ultimately all the way through to the international list, both in the men's game and the female game. And it really supplements or enhances further the work that the county FAs do. So most county FAs have their own core structure, and then we use the data available from performance lists at level 3, level 4, plus using our own assessment nights for potential talent from the county FAs to really have extra development sessions to try and really help people progress and get better. But my own personal view from the group I lead in the Northwest is very much along the lines of it's a referee-centred approach. It's not just about watching 10 clips and saying, right, this is wrong. We're talking about improving every single aspect of you as an individual referee, as you well know, Cal. So fitness levels, practical stuff to really instill using that fitness to the best way for your positioning and movement. But then we also need to start focusing more and more on the wider picture, particularly off-field stuff. So, helping people develop those relationships with clubs and players, using personality to do that. How we communicate effectively. So not just about what we say and how we say it, but a lot of people underestimate the importance of eye contact. And then one of the hardest things to teach and try and develop is how people can have skilled interactions to influence situations. So you're going to face many different situations as a referee, and you need many different options up here to deal with those situations. So can we recognise when someone's angry? Can we recognise when someone's happy with you? Can we recognise when somebody, you don't need to speak, you just need to listen to what they're saying and accept what they're saying? And so again, it's about developing the overall person. But I always try and bring back to those basic qualities that I said before. I firmly believe that everybody, no matter what level they are, should be honest and humble. And when we're training or we're working at development events, they should be giving 100%. Because if we're not giving 100%, then there's still, you can't complain when you don't achieve what you want to achieve, because you've got a little bit more to give and improve.
It's funny you should say that, because I remember on our assessment evening, the first drill we done, I wanted to try that hard, I fell over. I don't know whether you can remember that, but I remember I slipped over on the Astro at Lancs FA.
I won't say anything just in case you pull out some clip of me falling over in a game a couple of times over the years.
So you talk about the FA Core programmes about trying to identify talent early, of moving through the semi-professional into professional, potentially one day being a Premier League international referee. Do you feel that within the FA Core programme that you can identify those early enough, like a scout would maybe at a professional club?
I don't think it's a question of being able to identify somebody at that moment in time that say this person is going to make a top referee or this person is going to make a top player. It's all about recognising people's qualities and people's attitude, because there are examples over the years. You could take a referee who's a level 5, level 6. A lot of people will just say, right, he's not going to go anywhere, or she's not going to go anywhere, just plodding along doing stuff, right? But if that person is then shown a new way of working and they buy into those new ideas and prepare to try something different, and then all of a sudden things start to kind of progress, it's very much about keeping the door open to everybody. And the way people show their ability is not only getting a decision right or wrong on the field of play. A lot of it is about your attitude and your willingness to learn, and your willingness to do things differently occasionally, to try something new, which in time could benefit you.
So we're coming to the end now, and I've got a couple of more light-hearted questions for you.
Quick fire ones, I think.
Yeah. So, if you could have 5 referees and you're refereeing 5-a-side team, who would they be and why?
Right, okay. Well, this is pretty easy, actually, I think. So, I'll probably go for I'll give you 4 of the better players, football players in the select group. So I'd go for Michael Oliver, John Moss, Paul Tierney, and Andy Madley. Right? My wild card would be Kevin Friend, because I'd like to lure the opposition into a false sense of security, because we all know Friend is not particularly good. But we can lure him in, and Ollie and Mossy can hit him on the break with some skill, you see. Yeah.
Okay. Your team of 4 referees to be locked in isolation with.
Whether they want to be in isolation with me, that's another matter. Right, so let's go for a range of humour and friendship. So Mike Dean, Craig Pawson, Michael Oliver, and Martin Atkinson.
And I really like this question, this third one that we got sent in. Do you get spotted out in public now that these encounters sort of go down?
Well, I find them highly entertaining. The kids don't, but so some of the best encounters that I had are either in the supermarket or railway stations. So it does make me chuckle because people get all big and brave and start trying to be funny. So the best way to deal with that is to have a go back. In fact, I always remember a group of Liverpool supporters at Euston Station a couple of years ago. I just ref Chelsea-Liverpool.
I wasn't involved for it.
And I was on the phone to the missus at the time, and I was queuing to get on the train, and one of the guys was making snide comments behind me. Obviously, had a couple of drinks. So mid-flow to the wife, I kind of turned around and said, "Do you mind? I'm just on the phone to the wife." I said, "Well, you need to stop having a drink and then just give me 5 minutes and then you can buy me one and then we'll have a proper debate." Which he shut up very, very quickly. But a lot of the time, 99% of the time, people are genuinely interested in just asking questions. Of course, there's always the odd idiot, but it's how you deal with that idiot. So I think if you go back to the people and kind of try and engage a little bit and almost take the mickey out of the person if they're trying to take the mickey out of you, that tends to solve any possible conflict.
I think this is just a nice one to finish on. 248 games in the Premier League. You've done all the domestic finals. You've been involved in the 4 UEFA finals. I know, knowing you personally, you'll be looking to achieve much greater things in the coming years. What are your aims in the next few years, and have you got any plans for when you do finish? I know that's probably a long time away, but
something I don't. No, I mean the aims I've got left. I'd like to officiate a tournament, so at Euro as main referee at Euro or the World Cup. So obviously, the coronavirus pandemic kind of put a delay on stuff for my team and Michael's team, because they were due to select the referee teams for the Euros in early April. So the way we've approached that is that's effectively just added another 8 months onto the selection process. So of course, I still want to do that. Internationally wise, obviously there's a target for a couple of club finals as well, international wise. And no, I haven't got any plans for when I finish, because I don't know, because there's many examples of lads going towards 50. I'm not too sure I'll still be running around when I'm 50, but certainly at the speed of the game's going at the moment. But try and keep fit and healthy for as long as possible, certainly till for the next 3 or 4 years to the end of when I'm on the international list, and then just evaluate things from there.
Well, I think that's a nice way to leave it there. Tails, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
It's been nice to see you. And nice to have a sit down and a chat. It's an incredible insight into what has been a fantastic career, and it's going to continue. We wish you all the best for the rest of your career, and when you do get back out onto the pitch, if football does return. I'd like to thank everyone for sending the questions in on social media. And don't forget to follow the National Young Referee Development Team on all our social media for more content like this. So, Tails, thanks again for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
Bye.
Stay safe, everybody.